Table of Doom. Emma looked around the restaurant nervously. She'd never been in such expensive places. The white tablecloths, the candles on the tables, the waiters speaking in soft voices. It all seemed like something from someone else's life. She sighed and looked at the phone screen. Emma straightened up. This was her first blind date. Her friend had literally forced her to say yes. "Miss, can I help you?" The waiter's voice sounded. Emma smiled and pointed to the nearest table. "That's probably for me." She didn't know what her conversation partner should look like, but as she sat down, she noticed the man across from her. Tall, well-dressed, with a slight carelessness in his movements. And he was looking straight at her. "You've come," he said at last, grinning slightly. Emma froze. "Wait, is that him?" The man ordered wine, watching her carefully. He looked surprised. "It's just, you're not exactly what I imagined," Emma answered honestly. He grinned. "Were you expecting someone else?" She laughed nervously. "Maybe." The man leaned closer. "And now that you're here, do you want to leave?" Emma opened her mouth to answer, but suddenly felt something was wrong. "Excuse me," came another voice nearby. She turned and saw another man who was obviously looking for someone. Emma felt herself blushing. "Good. I think I sat at the wrong table." But her interlocutor only smiled. "I know." She opened her eyes wide. "You knew?" "Of course I did. I saw you come in, and I knew you were expecting someone else. But I wondered what would happen if you sat down with me." Emma covered her mouth with her hand in shock. "And you didn't say anything? Did you want me to?" She suddenly thought about it. "No, I didn't." "So who are you?" she finally asked. He took a sip of wine and smiled. "Alex." "Alex who?" "Just Alex." "You look like someone," Emma said suddenly. His face did seem familiar. "Have you ever heard of Alex Corp?" he asked casually. Emma almost choked. "Wait, you're not the same?" "Alex Grayson." He smirked. "I guess you recognized me." Emma gave him a different look. "The millionaire." She happened to be sitting at a Millionaire's table. "Do you think I should be scared?" she asked, crossing her arms. "Were you scared?" She sighed. "More like just shocked." "Then why don't you stay and find out what I'm really like?" Emma hesitated for a moment. She had no money, no expensive clothes, no fancy life. But somehow Alex didn't seem like the kind of person who cared about that. She smiled. "Well, since I'm here." Alex looked at her with interest. "Then I'll make sure you don't regret it." And Emma knew this was the beginning of something incredible. Emma had never believed in fairy tales. She'd grown up in a small apartment with a leaky ceiling, worked 2 jobs to pay the bills, and knew that princes on white horses only existed in the movies. But now there was a millionaire sitting in front of her who could afford anything, but for some reason wanted to stay at this table with her. "So what do you do, Emma?" Alex asked, looking at her carefully. She squirmed nervously. "I work in a bookstore." "Do you like books?" "I love them," she answered with a smile. "I wonder if I have many analysts in my company who read reports with the same passion." Emma laughed. "I doubt it's that exciting." Alex leaned closer. "Well, I'd like to know what you're passionate about." She met his gaze and realized for the first time that he wasn't looking down on her. He was genuinely interested. When dinner was over, Alex suddenly suggested, "Let's go for a walk." Emma wanted to refuse, but for some reason said, "But." They went out into the night streets of the city, and Alex suddenly asked, "If you had $1 million, what would you do?" Emma wondered. "I'd buy a new apartment for my mom. And probably open her own little bookstore." Alex nodded. "That's a good plan." She grinned. "What about you?" He froze. "I have millions. But sometimes I don't know what I really want." Emma looked at him. "And what is that?" He grinned. "Maybe right now I just want to spend this evening with you." They parted in front of her house. "Thank you for tonight," Emma said. "Thanks for choosing the wrong table," Alex grinned. She shook her head. "It was an accident." "Or fate," he objected. Emma smiled. A couple days later, Alex texted her again. and she suddenly realized that that accidental evening had changed her life forever. Emma hadn't expected Alex to actually write. But he did. Tonight. Coffee shop on the corner of 5th Avenue. I'll be waiting. She stared at the message for a long time, doubting whether to go. She was an ordinary girl, living from paycheck to paycheck, wearing an old coat and never dreaming of luxury. And Alex? He was too perfect, too rich, too unrealistic for her life. But still, when the clock struck 7, she found herself in that very coffee shop. And she saw him. Alex sat by the window, crossing his arms over his chest. As soon as he noticed Emma, his face lit up with a smile. I thought you weren't coming. Neither did I, she admitted honestly, sitting down across from him. He ordered their coffee and looked at her carefully. Why did you agree to meet again? Emma shrugged. Maybe I just want to understand why a millionaire wastes his time on an ordinary girl. Alex grinned. And I want to understand why an ordinary girl so easily forgets that a millionaire likes her. Emma blushed. Are you sure you're not confused? Maybe you are only attracted to those who chase money? Alex shook his head. Exactly. I usually have a hard time figuring out who's around me because of myself and who's around me because of my money. He looked at her more seriously. And you? You didn't know who I was. And even when you did, you didn't change. Emma was silent. She couldn't say that his money didn't interest her at all. She'd grown up poor, and a wealthy life had always seemed unattainable. But what she did know was that she couldn't stop thinking about him, even if he was just a regular guy. Over the next few weeks, Alex and Emma started seeing each other more and more often. He'd pick her up from work, they'd walk through parks, try street food, talk about books, dreams, and life. You've never invited me to expensive restaurants, she once remarked. I wanted you to see me, not my world, he replied calmly. And then Emma realized. He didn't want glamour, wealth, or status. He wanted her. But things couldn't be perfect. One day, as Emma walked out of the bookstore after her shift, she was greeted by camera flashes. Journalists, is it true you're dating Alex Grayson? How did you get him interested? Are you just after money? Emma stepped back in confusion. Her heart was racing. She didn't want this popularity. She didn't want to be judged. Most importantly, she didn't know how to live in Alex's world now. She arrived at his place that same night. Alex, this can't go on. He looked at her carefully. What are you trying to say? She clenched her fists. I'm not made for your world. I don't know how to be a millionaire's girl. Alex stood up and moved closer. Who says you have to be? Emma froze. Do you think I care about this money? All this showy stuff? Alex took her hands in his. I'm a millionaire, yes. But when I'm with you, none of that matters to me. Emma looked into his eyes. He was being honest. And then she realized. Maybe love isn't about status. It's about people who can be themselves around each other. She took a step toward him. Then teach me how to be with you, she whispered. Alex smiled. Just be yourself, Emma. That's enough. And in that moment she realized. Her life would never be the same again. Emma didn't think she could get used to the new world, but Alex didn't rush her. They kept walking, going to their favorite bookstores, drinking cheap coffee on the corner. But despite its simplicity, she couldn't forget that meeting with the journalists. The test of fame. The news that millionaire Alex Grayson was dating an ordinary girl broke instantly. Comments on the internet varied. Heavy check mark, how did she do it? Heavy check mark, she probably only wants his money. Heavy check mark, he could have found someone better. Emma tried not to read, but it was impossible. And at some point she began to wonder, what if they were right? One evening as they sat in his apartment, Emma exhaled. Alex, I don't think I'm right for you. He frowned. Why would you think that? I'm not from your world. I don't know how to behave in it. Alex was silent for a long time. Do you really think I care what world you belong to? She looked away. Maybe I just don't want to be your weakness. He stood up abruptly. My weakness? Emma, you're my strength. But she'd already taken a step back. "I'm sorry, Alex. I need some time." And out. Emma tried to get her life back on track. She worked, read books, avoided news about Alex Grayson. But every morning started with the same thought. How's he doing? And Alex? He never showed up. He gave her space, didn't try to change her mind. But then one day she saw his picture on the news. Alex Grayson is single again. They say he backed out of another deal and disappeared from the press. And that's when Emma realized. She hadn't just let him into her life. She became a part of it. A week later, she stood in front of the door of his house. Her heart was beating in a frantic rhythm. She knocked. The door opened. Alex stared at her, silent. "I was stupid," she whispered. He didn't move. "I tried to protect you from everything, but I didn't realize that the biggest loss was you." Silence. And then he just pulled her to him and kissed her. Emma's life was never the same again. But not because she was now dating a millionaire. It was because she realized that money was just money. And love, it had always been more than that.